Hey everybody, I'm Jason Truding of Percussion, and this is the Brooklyn Bound podcast. And I am so excited to be talking to an artist friend of mine who is playing. April 15th is the show. It's at 7 p.m. You should come out and check it out. This to my left is Francesca McNeeley, affectionately known as Franny Mac. How's it going?
Things are good. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me. This is gonna be fun.
Absolutely. I'm going to try not to glance at these subtitles, but I did notice that my name was Jason Shooting, which was really depressing. So I'm going to let that sit there for a second and then move
New
on.
stage
I think,
name. I like it.
yeah, it just means I need to work on my diction, I think is what that means. Um, I'm excited to see what you're going to be doing on Brooklyn Bound, and we should talk about that. But first, you're a cellist. We
Indeed.
met in Boston. Yeah. I was
Hmm.
trying to trace this exactly because I have fond memories of Tanglewood as well. But we met in Boston when you so graciously jumped in to play some Amid the Noise music with some fellow string players from NEC, which was amazing. How like young Franny Mac, how did you get to NEC? What's your trajectory? When did you discover music? When did you discover the cello? What's your line?
Great question. Yes, my line is definitely a little unconventional. Well, it started out conventional in that I just started really young. I'm a middle child, so my older sister was a violinist. Naturally, when I got to that age, I got handed her hand me down. I really hated that thing, it turned out, and so they tried me out on cello.
Put it this way.
I just moved it over. Things worked out better for me then.
uh,
So I started playing when I was super little. But yeah, it was something that we just did all the time. Like, I mean, our family was sort of musical, my mom especially. Um, so yeah, I mean, I played semi-seriously, kind of more seriously in high school. But when I got to college, I was not feeling particularly confident about a future in the arts. So I didn't actually really try. Like I didn't apply to music school. I didn't do the audition thing. I did well. I wound up at Princeton, which was a great place to go to school. Just missed you there.
yeah.
Although you probably were there for some concerts. I just didn't yet know who So Percussion was. But I was so young, so naive. I've learned. um, but so I did my undergrad, but when I was there, I wasn't actually originally intending to do music seriously. Part of why I chose Princeton was that I knew it had a great music department, and I knew that it mattered to me to keep playing at a strong level. But I was a politics major, and
Awesome.
yeah, but by like sophomore year, I realized that that was not the world I wanted to
Mm.
function in. It's hard. I respect the people who can do it, but I think like too torn by everybody's problems left and right to feel confident about anything in terms of
Mhm.
like decision making in that sort of field. Um, and I think I just love musicians more as people. I think I
Mhm.
love that was like a part of myself I never had to explain, even if at that time I wasn't super sure what it meant for me. But I just knew that those are the people that I just kind of spoke my language. And and Princeton's an interesting environment for that, right? Because it's like people who came competitively from high school who went on to be mechanical engineers
Yeah.
and politicians and all this stuff. So I think the fact that
Well,
I
that's what I was gonna ask. Like at Princeton, sorry for the Zoom
oh
awkward
no
cutoff, but I'm picturing I'm picturing
yeah
your people. So you hang at Woolworth, you find your people, or orchestra or chamber, you find your people. Like I think there is a political people at Princeton that I just don't interface with so much. But like I think Princeton can be like maybe known to have that streak or even have a conservative streak when it comes to politics, maybe, right? Like, and just
yeah.
I never interact with those folks here. Is there a political hang at Princeton as well? And you were kind of like in both and got drawn more towards one, or
I think I tried. Like I tried to make friends in the politics department. And there were some really nice people. Don't get me wrong. Like some of my only non-music friends, I think there were like three. It's true.
okay.
Like I'm sorry, anybody who's watching this. But and they're awesome people. But I think they were also kind of people who like, they weren't fully in anything themselves. Like they were kind of more nuanced individuals. But I think a lot of yeah, in terms of the sort of the political climate at school, I think what I felt was that a lot of the students leaned conservative, a lot of the teachers did not. There were a couple of pretty like I think it was Robbie George was like very known conservative, very staunchly so. But I think in general the department was quite liberal, so it made for really cool classes where the professor would be like really challenging what some people held as preconceived ideas. But I also say like in politics there was a split. There were the people who sorry, I'm gonna offend a bunch of people. Sorry.
I think you're
I mean,
good. Bring it.
whoops. um, now there are some people who are like really there to do good, like the ones who just really came with all this knowledge. Even as freshmen, they knew so much, and just a lot of really sincerely wanting to make the world better.
Mm,
And then there were the types that just wanted to run for office, which I think was a very different vibe. And
mm,
I think I happened to just meet more of those people that were not quite my cup of tea. They
mm.
just felt very
Yeah.
self-important and
Yeah.
wanted your vote now, even though they weren't
Yeah.
going to run for 4 years. I don't care
Can you
about.
sign this? I think in 8 years I'm gonna run for. Will you vote for? Yeah, that's
Yeah,
really
it
good.
really felt like it for some
Uh,
people. So yeah, it was interesting because also it's a
mm,
huge department, so there's lots of different types of people. But I think, I mean, this isn't just at college. I think in life in general, I think I've always kind of been drawn more to either musicians or people who just are maybe have more split personalities, if that
mm,
makes sense.
yeah.
Because I think a lot of us in that field are kind of like that, right? Like we are constantly questioning ourselves, and, and
Yeah.
that you kind of become, I think, a little more nuanced as a human. So yeah. So that being said, let's see. So basically, by the middle of college is when I had this kind of realization that at the end of the day, I tried to immerse myself in sort of the culture of the politics department, but I just didn't feel like myself fully. I didn't feel
Mm,
comfortable with the sort of career options before me. And I just really liked being around musicians, playing music, making music. And so basically after my sophomore summer, I was like, okay, either you try now or, this, you can't just figure this out after undergrad.
mm.
But of course it was too late to actually switch majors. So I definitely wound up, hey Beth, no.
Yeah. It's Beth back there.
Yeah.
It is. It's Francesca. Yeah.
Good.
Beth's making a cameo on the podcast. You want to say hi?
Oh my God.
Do you have a question for Freddie Mac?
Let me just fix my hair.
I'll fill you in on what she
I
says.
should look at my calendar.
We're in
Love it.
Studio A here, but it was co-signed out, so it's tricky in a small space.
No
I'm just joking.
worries.
But so did you move what you were about to did you then at Princeton, did you end up going for a music major at Princeton or did you go somewhere else? I forget the
Yeah, they make it a little hard to switch. Because basically part of it also is that by the time I realized like how much work I was gonna have to put into getting into grad school, just a lot of practicing was gonna need to happen. Um, God bless my teacher in college who somehow put up with me because I think freshman year, like I would practice just the hour before my lessons. That's like all I could manage as I was navigating a new school. It was like, oh my God, lessons at 3. What? Like run to the practice room, figure it out. By sophomore year, it was like twice a week. But by junior year, I was like, okay, if I'm really serious, I'm going to have to figure this out. So, I mean, I thought about switching majors, but I would have had to make up so many prerequisites that I was like, well, I want to try to practice, which is the point. And at Princeton, like the music major is it's musicology for the most part, some composition, but that wasn't my calling. So either I was gonna have to work a lot and read a lot, or just suck it up, finish my major, and take all my free time to do music. So that's what I did.
Awesome.
Yeah.
But then there was a longer, right? Because I can picture, maybe I just picture your cello case. I picture stickers.
Oh,
I know there's Rice involved.
yes.
And I know there's Boston involved. There's NEC.
Yes.
Yeah. So was the trajectory then you headed out to Houston?
Yep. Next was Houston, which I'm really glad I got to go there. I mean, it's this really intense cello school. Went there for my master's. My teacher was super supportive. He was like one of the first people that I had met who was actually happy that I had done an undergrad in something else. Yeah. I mean, I know nowadays I think there's more people who've done this, who've had this circuitous path, but like I think junior year I started taking like summer festival auditions. Legitimately walked into one place where the guy saw my resume. I hadn't played a note, just saw my resume, said, "Princeton, what are you doing here?" And I was like, "Oh, that's a good feeling."
Maybe I don't want to be here. Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right, or I hope you're right that story is getting less strange and more like I mean, there's so many talented musicians in the world. It feels like more complex thinkers and more complex artists are it's a positive, to have a background in something that's not just music. But I wonder if you were somewhere on the cusp of that transition, and maybe now it's more
it feels like it,
or more supported.
Yeah, it definitely feels like it. I mean, at least speaking specifically for Princeton, I think I noticed that the younger classes, there were more and more kids that I saw going through Princeton winding up actually in music really seriously. I mean, there were a few my year, but I think it felt like we were maybe the front of a wave of that happening,
Yeah,
at
yeah,
least specifically there.
yeah.
Yeah, so Rice for my master's, and then I freelanced for a little bit in Texas, and I am, again, no offense to Texas, but I learned that it wasn't. I'm just picking everybody up.
We're just checking off the. But so this is just because I didn't. I'd love to get to not just your history, but your history is really fun to talk about. So where were you before Princeton? You were in New York.
Oh,
You were in.
places. Yeah, I'm from many places. This is
Yeah,
always a tough question of like where are you from?
yeah.
Because so I was born in Haiti. Of my siblings, I was the only one that was born there. The others were born in New York. But then we lived in New York for quite a while. Um, and then we moved to Princeton, New Jersey, like the
Okay.
actual town.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
by the time I went to college, I was a townie that was,
Right.
transitioning. But that was also when my parents left though. So now they live in North Jersey. And the whole time I was in college, they were in North Jersey. So it wasn't like they were right there. But I had some friends from high school that were still in town. And it was, meeting new people.
Yeah.
And
I was
we
just trying to picture Houston. So like you were then freelancing in Houston, and I was thinking you were raised somewhere else, not Texas.
Yeah.
So you're feeling like, okay, this isn't my scene.
No, it's just, and it's
I
hard
was
to
born in
explain.
Houston, so be careful. I left when I was
Oh, were
4,
you?
but I have so many fond memories of all my playmates. No, I'm just joking. I don't remember anything about Houston, but I was born there.
Oh, cool. Deep roots.
Yeah, deep roots.
Yeah, with Houston, it's like the lifestyle is what got me the most. I think if you kind of grew up with it, that's like what you get. But because we were living in New York for a lot of my like younger life, I hadn't realized how much I missed like the randomness of dealing with people. Like in New York, you leave your apartment, you're gonna like meet 5 interesting people on the street that might make you
Yeah.
cross the sidewalk sometimes, but it's like you're kind of constantly bombarded with people you don't know.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly once I was out of school in Texas and having to really live in Texas, I realized how lonely it was. Like you could just never see a soul if you didn't want to, aside from the grocery store,
Yeah.
You drive everywhere. Nobody
Yeah.
walks. Nobody goes on the sidewalks. There's no like downtown to sort of explore in that way. It's just anything you do socially, it's you making plans with someone you already know and you drive to that point to hang out. You don't just engage with random people. And so there were a couple times I think I visited New York because my parents were close to there, and I think I just realized like, whoa, like, oh, there's humans. Like you can, I just feel like I'm surrounded by people, even if I'm, still like kind of on my own. And so I think that sunk in pretty quickly. And when I was out of school in Texas, and just all the driving, I was starting to have like hip problems, and I was like, I'm 22.
Oh, yeah.
This shouldn't be happening. So that's when I had to actually learn to like go to the gym and stuff, because I realized you can't just walk and take advantage of that kind of natural activity.
It's wild. I feel part of the COVID thing is the lack of just seeing people randomly. And I think about it for me and Beth, but also for my kids. It's like everything has to be planned, and like so it's only with friends. It's not with just meeting people and having random wonderful conversations, or not wonderful conversations, whatever. But just the randomness of like like it feels like we're in that moment right now. And yeah, maybe I like that. I'm gonna think like I just live in Texas right now.
I'm thinking about it. Probably would have been a great place to. I mean, Houston, the way I was living, but like, oh yeah, I'll quarantine here. Just my normal ritual.
So now you're in more of a city. Now you headed to Boston and for NEC, and you've stayed in Boston.
Yeah, I mean, basically, like within months of kind of being out of school in Texas, I realized I just wanted to get elsewhere and root myself somewhere else. And I just know that it's easier to do when you do it through school, as opposed to just like hoping, which some people do really well. I just was scared, so so I applied for school again. Came to NEC and did a diploma, and now I'm around. It's been good. Yeah.
I don't know enough about Boston, actually. I mean, I feel like I've been a few times, and actually when we met, well, can I tell you, this is how I knew that you were a very cool human, that I wanted to know more than just like a one gig kind of thing, was that in this show, it was like a lot of different folks from different schools, right? And NEC, strangely, I don't want to knock on the percussion department there, because but like nobody wanted to be involved from NEC percussion department. I think it was orchestral folks, and maybe it was a busy time of year, but like nobody from NEC percussion department wanted to be involved. But like Berkeley and Boston Conservatory and like a lot of other spots, there were a ton of percussionists playing. And then it was like string players from NEC, which I thought was kind of cool. But then I remember saying like, okay, and when we do this piece, it can be a little awkward, but like when you're not playing, everybody sits on the ground. And I just remember looking at the string players, but also you specifically, because the cello, it's like, is that okay? Like, we don't have to do this if this sucks. And you're like, no, it's fine. Just like throw the cello down, sit right on the ground. And you're like, it was like you were just all in a really fun way. So that was very memorable.
Well, I will say, I think part of that for me is that I think in another life, I've always said this, but I think I would have been a percussionist. I like the gear and the just the things to play with, and I don't know. So I think like there's a bit of like just kind of watching it. I was like a kid in a candy shop, just being like, ooh, like what? This is cool, and the vibes and the polyrhythms, and I'm just like really digging it. So it's
awesome.
I mean, instead I play the cello, but
cello's a good one though. I agree. My kids for 2 seconds had a little violin. And that's hard. Kids with violins are hard, but also it's like, yeah, the cello, turn it this way. Let's get some lowness in the room. Well, awesome. I want to hear about, so I definitely want to hear about what you're doing on Brooklyn Bound, but just in other moments of your life, like we've connected mostly so gratefully through my music, this music that I wrote after Amid the Noise, kind of put together a weird group of people, not a weird group, but a wonderful group of people, but a random instrumentation of people to play. And I've been so grateful that you've been doing that when the world allows. But what else have you been up to? You've been playing some solo music? And I imagine in the before times you were playing with other people as well.
Indeed. I mean, I feel, luckier than most that I've, at least since 2021, I've felt pretty busy with stuff. So one of the groups that I play a lot with is called Castle of Our Skins, and it's I wouldn't call it it's a nonprofit that sort of celebrates Black culture and Black music and Black artistry. And I guess my side of the involvement has mostly been in like playing music, chamber music by Black composers. A lot of really amazing stuff and now I'm hearing from so many people in my life now that are like, oh, you guys did that piece. Oh, my group wants to, It's great to see that that's gaining a lot of traction. But we've been doing that KOOS has been around for almost 10 years now. Castle of Our Skins.
Yeah, I was just doing the acronym. I know it as Castle of Our Skins. KOOS, love it. I'm down.
So it's great they've been doing this for so long, and it's of course also interesting that, because I heard somebody put it this way in like a podcast, but like 2020 is like Black is the new Black, and everyone's getting real excited.
Yeah.
I hope it's not just a trend.
It's not just 2020. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I hope it's something more than that, but I think for a lot of people it is. So
Castle of Our Skins has been around for a while. You've been playing with them not for the whole time, but for a while.
Yeah, but I think since maybe 2016 or 17 was my first thing with them. It was 2017. But there's been a lot of just really cool concerts and collaborations. And one thing that's been interesting with Boston, part of it's because it's a smaller music scene than like say New York, but it's been cool to see how some spaces have figured out how to bring artists in. So for example, we've done like a recording project at the Gardner Museum here.
Oh yeah. I haven't been to, we played that place a ton in our early years, but it didn't have that cool new, like we played in like the tapestry room or something.
Oh yeah.
There's like a crazy,
it's a cool room. Yeah. With like,
it's like all sides.
Right. Yeah. It's like what do you call it? Yeah. The audience is on all four sides. Some are on the floor with you, but also it's like 4 levels or something. Right. So you can be up on the top and looking down at the ensemble in the center.
Very cool.
We did a Julius Eastman, Joan, Holy Presence of Joan Dark.
Yeah. All the cellos. Yeah.
We did that there with dancers.
Wow.
Fall of 2019, I think. Yeah.
Very cool.
That was also like through KOOS arranged that, but so that was super cool. The recording project we're doing right now is about African American spirituals, and that's coming out like once a month. But we did that like a bit in the courtyard, a bit in like the Red Room and the Dutch Room, and which also like the Netflix documentary just came out about the Gardner heist. So it's kind of,
right.
It just came out like this week, so it's been interesting to watch it now because like one of the rooms that we were playing in is like one of the rooms that got majorly robbed.
Right, I totally forgot. I remember when we first played there, then hearing about this story and getting into it for a second. Is it still an unsolved? It's like an unsolved.
I think so. It's
yeah.
Crazy. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, Netflix. Yeah. I'm gonna have to do that.
Endorsement. Does this count?
Is it super heavy or is it kind of fun? Because I can only do kind of fun right now when it comes to Netflix.
It's a little heavy. It's not that heavy because they don't know anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like nobody died, but they're like definitely like dramatizing, the music and everything. But nobody actually knows anything. Is my impression.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, so that was like a cool project to see them open up to artists, because obviously the museum can't be at capacity. So on a day where it was
Right.
closed to people, they were able to do that for some musicians.
That's really nice. Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and other spaces, not just them. There's just been stuff like that it's been nice to see people adapt and try to find a way to bring music in. Um, yeah, and let's see. I mean, yeah, so Castle of Our Skins has been quite a bit of stuff. I did recently a cool what you call it, session gig. I'm forgetting the name of the artist. Oh my gosh, he's a famous Irish singer. Oh my gosh. Uh
Singer.
Morrissey?
Hmm?
Morrissey? Morrissey. We
Oh,
recorded for a Morrissey track.
cool. Like pop, like famous art, like pop.
Yes.
Yeah, killer.
Which was cool. That was the first time I was in a room with more than a cello in a year.
Yeah, right.
Granted,
Yeah.
still distanced, and it was only four of us, but
Yeah.
that's experience. But it was kind of crazy.
Was that a quartet? You were playing with a quartet?
No, they did like a small orchestra. They assembled,
Oh,
but they did this thing where we doubled up, like we moved chairs during the session to sort of
oh
double
yeah,
up
yeah,
the
yeah.
sound in the room.
Fun.
Cool. Anyway, so I feel lucky that like random things like that have been able to happen.
Yeah.
I know some other people have been super into the outdoor playing, which I haven't done a lot of yet because I'm a baby and it's always cold. So.
Yeah.
It hasn't
I thought it was
up
gonna be
enough.
cello related or something. Yeah, Beth has some outdoor, like just strings outdoors. It does feel like yeah. She. This is not about her, but just as an aside between me and you,
Yeah.
podcast cut.
Yeah.
Regina Spektor used to tour with a string quartet, and so Beth got to play a lot of cool spaces or whatever. But there was a memorable one. I think it was like Hollywood Bowl or Greek Theater, something big like that. That it just started pouring, and like I think they're technically under kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But not really, And so she's like, I'm in California. I only have my good instrument. Like, what, it's like, when is it okay to be out here, and when do we just have to say like, I'm really sorry guys, we have to leave,
Yeah.
like that's like, so I thought you were gonna say that, but no, you're just
it's like 50s here. It's it's Boston. It's just
50s. That's great. No, I hear you. Actually, I haven't done any outdoor playing either. Our life seems similar to yours right now, like a lot of remote kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Not a lot of outdoor playing, but slowly things are coming back, and a lot of cool recording stuff. So
yeah.
So have you been playing solo, or has this been? I want to hear about what you're doing on Brooklyn Bound, which is a few solo jams.
Sure. I mean, so I'd been doing some solo a little earlier in the pandemic, like this time last year I was, and I think in the fall there were a couple of things. But I think now that this 2021 has just had a lot of collaborative stuff, so that's been nice. So yes, Brooklyn Bound was a chance to come back and revisit some stuff solo, which was great. But if you want to hear about the set that I chose, so I really wanted to like, well, what am I trying to say? I couldn't help but like kind of indulge in things that feel a little more kind of self-contained and like meditative, just because I think that's a thing that I've been doing a lot this year. It's been helpful. So they're maybe slightly on the more mellow side, but very different types of pieces. So the first piece I'm doing is by this young composer named Ben Yi Paulson, who was a classmate of mine at NEC. I think now he's doing his doctorate, I want to say at IU or something, but elsewhere. And he wrote this piece for me that I premiered back in 2019 at NEC. And it's in 3 movements, but I just played the first movement for Brooklyn Bound. And it's kind of cool it was cool for me to reflect on that particular piece, because I think, it was the spring of 2019. I feel like I had such a different outlook on what the next year was going to be. And yeah, so
yeah.
Yeah, and it's just, I remember that particular time of the year feeling super hectic for me because I was in between stuff, and I felt like I had learned the piece a little bit quickly because, that's just what happens sometimes in life.
Yeah.
And the fall was happening, and I mean, 2020 fall, I knew what that year was going to be, and I didn't know if I don't know. I just remember like 2019, that particular moment, just feeling I was so sure of what the next like 2 years are going to look like for me, and also just feeling like really hectic and busy. So it's been something interesting about coming back to that now at a time when it's much more calm, and sort of remembering what it felt like to play it then, and to kind of take a second take at it now. So that's the first piece I'll be playing.
Very cool.
And the other 2 pieces are by Coleridge Taylor Perkinson, Two movements from Lamentations, Black Folk Song Suite for solo cello. And that's a piece that I bought the music for like, I was like 2 or 3 years ago. It was just sitting here collecting dust. Pandemic gave me a lot of time to finally start to learn it, I guess. Thanks,
Yeah, right.
I guess.
It's like many movements.
It's four
Yeah.
movements, but I've only done two.
Okay.
I'm like partially through learning the outer movements, but they are really long, and especially the last one's like super long and hard. And yeah, I had big plans to finish it, but hey, the pandemic's not over. Maybe I
No, there's
get there.
time. I think there's time. Yeah.
Great.
Well, that's cool. So what are the middle movements? Are they the more chill?
Yeah, they're the
A
ones
little
that feel, a little more chill, but that being said, they feel really profound to me. So like not chill in the sense of easygoing. I mean, I think like the message is really deep. One movement is called song form, which it doesn't have any particular, I think, quote or anything. And then the other one is called Calvary Ostinato. So it's an ostinato off of like a really famous, well, not famous, but like a well-known
yeah.
African American spiritual called Calvary. And it's just cool. It's all plucked, and it's just cool how he does the voicing of it. That was the first movie that I learned of this suite. I think it was basically a year ago around this time. And then over the summer I learned the second movement. It's cool to play them together as a set. So yeah, those are the
Awesome.
selections I made.
And when was he writing music? When, like, I think when you had suggested this piece a while ago, and then
Yeah.
I think Seth Parker Woods was playing. So like I've started to see some out,
Yeah.
maybe see some videos of them, but I don't know much about his music. When
Yeah.
is or was he writing music? And
Great question. I mean, I've played what was the dates? Sorry, I should look at, oh, I won't pull up the thing. Because I could double check my scores. Mostly, I mean, he only died a couple years ago, I believe.
Okay.
Because I think the main recording of his that was made for this piece was, I think, done in like, I'll say in the 2000s. So he was still alive then. I think he consulted on, I think Tyre Washington is the cellist name, who did the main recording that he at least endorsed of the suite. Yeah, I don't think there was from when she did it. I haven't seen a lot of recordings from around that time. Many more now. And I mean, what was it? The like Kossauer, the principal cellist of Cleveland, did this on their series, and Beast did it. So I was like, oh, gotta keep practicing.
Wait, did you just use beast as a verb? Beasted?
Is it not?
No, I think it probably is. I was
Did the subtitles catch me?
Yeah, no, I'll go back and check the transcript. That's really good. Somebody else. Yeah, I feel like I'm having a moment. I just learned another wonderful turn of phrase. We need to talk more.
I'm here to educate.
Okay, beast as verb. Good.
Yes.
Check. This conversation has been well worth my while. I don't know how it's been for you. Well, so awesome. So it's those two pieces, selections from two pieces, but three movements. Very cool. I'm very, very pumped about it. Thanks for getting that together. I don't know. It's so funny to think about this. Brooklyn Bound used to be, we all got together in our studio, and our studio is pretty small in Brooklyn, and 30 or 40 people can fit in there, and it's pretty, everybody just gets together and tries some things out for each other, and really wonderful. But then this is so nice, to be able to have folks from other places kind of jump in and share stuff. I'm really curious what it's going to be like in the after times, if we, which way we're going to go. But if we have shows in our space again, I'd love to have you out there to actually play live. But I'm very much looking forward to this. I feel like I may have told you before we started pushing play that or pushing record, that there's 5 questions I tend to ask people, and I guess maybe I should stop saying questions. 5 little, like, like, what got you to play the cello, what you've been up to, what you're doing on Brooklyn Bound. So if you're following, we're 3 questions in, and then our other 2 questions are more like, not about Brooklyn Bound, but just kind of like, bigger thoughts about the moment. And I feel like we started to talk about it a little bit with Koos and with some of the music you're playing, but just thinking about this moment and thinking about this moment as like, it's weird to be so far into this moment. I feel like I was asking this question, like 12 months ago also, and the question 12 months ago was more like, okay, pandemic has shut down live performance. What does it mean to be an artist right now? How have you been reflecting on that? And then a few months later into the question, it's like, okay, as we're thinking about what it means to be an artist, now, because of a string of murders, but because of George Floyd's murder on video, we are now in our scene talking about equity in a more serious and deliberate way. And what does our scene mean? What does that mean for our scene? And as artists, what does that mean? And then, whatever many months after that, it was around the election. Like, you just keep piling things up to talk about like how serious this moment is and what does it mean to be an artist in this moment. And I feel like my question or my answer to that question has changed so many times about like, what about my practice needs to continue and what needs to change and what is our role, those kinds of things. So, for yourself, how have you been processing this moment as an artist, or what has changed for you, or what hasn't, or what feels like it needs to, or what's it been like for you?
There's been like so much going on this year. I think something I feel like I've definitely doubled down on, because I think I was already feeling this way, but I think the events of everything have only kind of made me feel stronger that I do, like I do love that I happen to just have a lot of students of color. I mostly just, well, not obviously mostly, but many of my students are students of color. And I think it's been an interesting year because it's easier to have really candid conversations with parents about things sometimes. But I know I've had some pretty explicit conversations with some parents that are just like, because the pandemic, we weren't always sure how to keep things moving forward. It's like, oh, should we keep studying? Should you find a new teacher that's more convenient or whatever, and all that stuff. But a lot of teachers parents have doubled down on like, no, I think it's important my kid learn from someone that looks like them.
Yeah.
Often what the conversation was, or someone that can connect with them in that way. And I was already kind of feeling pretty, that already had, I guess, mattered to me pre-pandemic, and I think has mattered more in some ways during the pandemic. And even just the funny conversations, I shouldn't say, sorry, I use the word funny too loosely. But
I know what you mean, but yeah.
Well, there's a very early in the pandemic when like lessons were switching to virtual, I had a little student, I guess about 10 years old, that like, it was interesting to watch them have like kind of a meltdown on Zoom about George Floyd in particular. It was like, I guess they too young to fully, well, young and or old enough to understand, but not quite, mature enough and to fully process it. But they were overhearing a lot of conversations at their house from the adults, and so we were just spewing things at me on a lesson. It was one of those days where like the cello was out. I saw the vibe. I was like, don't like, this is not not those days. And we just had like a conversation the whole time and about kind of what was going on. And it's interesting. I think people underestimate the kinds of things that kids are absorbing at that age. And I think the messages I was trying to be sensitive. I guess the messages that she was sort of relaying to me were that like, 1, cops are evil and that guy should die. 2 was that the world hates Black people. And it was just like, in hearing her process this out loud, I was like, oh boy, And I think, I like with conversations about representation, I do feel like people underestimate, like, especially with little kids, like I don't know, just kids seeing more people that look like them doing things that they either aspire to do or like, or learning from, I think people just underestimate all of that. And I think it was just interesting to watch this little, girl of color express things in these ways. I mean, just like, and it was a mix of like, I don't know, it's just like the way she was sort of, I guess, portraying justice and injustice, and the way she was, either she's little, what does she know? She doesn't read the news.
Yeah.
They're listening. They notice, they see these things too. So I think I've been trying to remember that as well, of like, what is the world that we want the kids, these 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds to be ready to face in 6 or 8 years. So I think that's a sort of a side of it that I think we don't always acknowledge in the education and like what the kids are exposed to. But
that's amazing. I mean, did you feel like, I think about that with my kids. I have 2 daughters who play music, and both of them study piano, and their piano teacher is a female, and that's never, but my other, drummer goes to School of Rock for a week, she knows she's a Beatles fan, she's totally in it, but she comes back and it's just like, I don't love being at this place, it's like, well, why? Like,
Mm.
all the posters on the wall, all the teachers, all the, like, none of it is showing her,
Mm.
none of it is female. It's just like male energy everywhere, right? And so
Yeah.
like, being explicit, that was, I mean, that's just so silly. And so this example comes up so much when it hits home, when it hits closer to home. She's telling her dad that, and I'm like, oh my God, that makes total sense to me.
Wow.
Why didn't I think of that 10, 20 years ago? Why did I need to have my kid go through it for me to think about, like, right, if she sees herself in her teacher, that's like really important. So like, we've searched out her drum, her drum teachers have always been, female badass drummers. But like, when for you, when you were studying, did you think about that as a student, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, so that's something that I hadn't really thought of until way later. I mean, it wasn't until my 20s that I met a mentor, like a female cellist of color. And I hadn't even realized that I had missed that. But I happened to meet her at a time that I was, I think, feeling a little maybe like lost in terms of like professional focus, and just feeling a little out of steam. And it's, I mean, she is an incredible teacher on her own, but I think having that element of it, it's like seeing somebody who is doing something that I aspire to, who kind of looks like me. It's like I had that hit so late in my life that, like, but it was amazing. Like it's still like, it's something that energizes me when I need it. Just having kind of a mentor relationship with her, but I hadn't even realized that they were like, she's the only woman of color I can think of in classical music at that high of a level in the field. Not to say there aren't a lot of other super talented ones, but just at her tier, it was the only one that I could name. So that was just, it was interesting. And I guess when I felt what that impact had on me, I was just like, I couldn't help but feel maybe a sense of purpose for myself about trying to be present as a teacher in that realm. And it's also been an interesting thing about moving up to Boston. There's a huge Haitian community here, like enormous Haitian community. In normal times, if you get in an Uber, 80% of the time I have a Haitian Uber driver. Most of the time when I'm going into stores, like if you know Creole, you'll hear it. You hear it in the bus, you hear it in the T. I think, kind of thing that if you don't recognize the language, you probably just don't. There's a lot of Haitian people here. So that's been a whole other interesting thing for me to maybe re-explore at this sort of phase of my life. Because like, I guess when I was living in Houston, obviously a lot of Hispanic people. And so I think I didn't have sort of that cultural thing to connect to when I was there. And I think those were the years that I maybe becoming an adult more so.
Right.
So moving up to Boston was suddenly like, oh, this thing I haven't tapped into outside of my family network in a long time. So it's just been interesting. So I have quite a few Haitian students too, which has been a fun thing to connect with. Sounds like all of our moms make the same noise when they're disappointed with us. And, like little things you can't explain.
I love that. It's cool to hear you talk about the role model side of things, or just leadership side, or whatever that is. I feel like that's something in my life that I haven't thought a lot about. I've thought about being a performer more than I've thought about being a teacher, even though I've taught a lot. And I used to say I like it, and now I would say I love it. Like I definitely, I love it, and I think there's such import there. But like, I would identify more as a performer and artist. And then something about this time for me too has been kind of rethinking what it means. Like, if somebody looks up to you, whatever the scene is, however small, you know what I mean? Like my group of students or percussionists who know what I do, or whatever that is, So it's, I feel like that's really cool, the way you're thinking about your teaching process right now. Is like, I identify with that, rethinking that, what it means to be a role model during this time,
Yeah, and I guess going back to your original question, it's like when people talk about equity, obviously the whole pipeline conversation comes up all the time, where it's like, I say in the case of orchestras or whatever specifically in the field, I guess part of the argument that people say is that, well, there aren't enough students of color showing up, or people of color showing up to these environments, so therefore of course they wind up staying very, very white and whitewashed, because there are, then it's a numbers game, and it's not playing in the favor of Black people or people of color. So I think that's also where it's, I know there's some truth to that. There's obviously a lot of other mechanisms at play too. Like if this is my, I guess, think of it as a long-term investment. It's like, these are keep these youth going, keeping them energized, and keep them feeling seen. And I also, especially with the girls, I try to make it a point to make sure that a lack of confidence is not what keeps them from doing this. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
they just want to be a doctor, they want to be something else. Totally fine, but
Yeah.
don't do it because you think you can't, please.
Yeah,
I try to make that a part of my mission too.
yeah. That's badass. Well, the last question I have for you is a bit more about just concerts. We used to play concerts, I've played some with you. It's been great. We've been in rooms together where we've played concerts for people. It's very lovely. It's a lovely thing. And and I wonder if this could be for Castle of Our Skins, or it could be for you. Just like the kind of sometimes the swapping of stories between. So I know, it's like we swap stories about the memorable concerts that we had, or when we're on the road. It's like, it can be oftentimes the bad thing that's happened to us on stage, but sometimes also just a wonderful experience, like that. They almost turn into myth at a certain time. You know what I mean? Like the stories change enough to be like, they get worse and worse or better and better. But that kind of shared experience is such a powerful thing, I think, and I think I realized when we stopped playing concerts, like, oh my gosh, I miss that energy. I miss the energy with the audience, but also the energy with the group. Do you have any particularly fun or memorable or any of those kind of stories from when we used to play concerts? Like what's a real touchstone for you?
Like for pre-pandemic.
Yeah, I think pre-pandemic.
Yeah. Well, the residency we did at in Vermont was super super cool. I think what I loved about that week was that it was, well, I guess because there wasn't such a boundary between like off the clock and on the clock, because it was such a creative kind of collaborative environment. Right. That I think just transitioning between the activities, everything, it just felt like a whole week of a retreat, which I think was the point. Because we were in those little pod shell things for like many hours in the day, and it was like rehearsing, discussing, rehearsing, I don't know, just kind of mixing up the pod to see what's coming out.
And then do you do you remember playing Cards Against Humanity with Seth Knox? Is that not a memorable?
I need to forget some of what that was.
I have to say, whenever I randomly, we play Cards Against Humanity with my nephew. My nephew's like 19 or something, so me and Beth will terrify my sister and play Cards Against Humanity with my nephews. It's really fun, but we always remember that moment of I'm sorry, we can't be more specific about what we shared. Cannot be more explicit. It was that was very, so many memorable things about that. Or Francesca, I'm sorry, I am hijacking this conversation. You coming to pick me and Beth up when we were stuck on the hill.
The whole week was so unbelievable. Also, I'm not gonna lie, I had no, I shouldn't say this on a podcast. Oh, hello.
Like I could just tell from the way you were laughing, Jason, that you were talking about a near-death experience.
It was a near-death experience.
Like
for me.
I'm so sorry. I mean, if my car was skidding towards you on a mountainside.
Okay, for those of you still watching at home who haven't just left me and Franny Mac to just have our wonderful nostalgia, after our show in Putney, Vermont, it was icy roads. My Prius was trying to make it up a hill with a Fender Rhodes in the back, and it was
a mountain. It was a mountain.
Yeah, it was, and it was icy. It was very icy. And we were driving, Beth was driving specifically, and a huge truck was coming this way. And so we stopped to let the truck by, and then there was no way to go. And Francesca dove in to save us, to offer to save us. And on the phone, we're saying, please don't drive down this hill. This hill is, you will die. We will walk. It's fine. But you said, I have four-wheel drive. I will come to save you. And then all I remember is headlights coming our way. It's like ducking behind trees.
I mean, like all I could think in that moment was like driving school. It's like pump the brake. Like that's all. Like I was like, my heart was racing. Somehow I wasn't shaking though. I was holding the steering wheel so firmly. And I think Seth, he had after the fact was like, wow, you were really good. Like you seemed so calm under pressure. I was dying. I was dying on the inside because I was like, you got so cocky.
I need to know more if this was your idea or his idea.
Well, there was the third equation in the room was that we had started drinking a little bit before we got the call from you guys, and not saying I had probably had a couple sips of wine that might have given me a little bit of liquid courage that made me think that was reasonable. And so I think between that, Seth being like, "Are you sure?" and I was like, "Yeah." I can do this. I can do this. I wanted to help my friends.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Um,
amazing. Well, there has to be times in the future that we play this music again, because this band we got together was really special with you and Beth and Alex Saab and Gray McMurray and Jank. It's so memorable. And actually on this show, we're going to do a little bit of this Go Placidly music. Actually, you're playing on one that slow moving that Sam Amadon's going to sit in and sing on, which is going to be really special. Very excited about that. And then actually Adam and Christina are playing a duo version of the piece that we play duo.
okay.
Yeah, that has a name that we just know it as Rhodes Solo or Rhodes Duo or something like that. It has a name that I'll figure out before April 15th. But we'll pretend we're going to slice out that part of the podcast and nobody will see it. I'm just joking. We don't ever edit anything about these. What's another memorable concert experience that you can share that I won't hijack?
No worries. Gosh, I was like, what was pre-pandemic?
Because we also met at Tanglewood, which I think, I had never been there. We didn't meet there, but you were there the one time I was there, and I got the feeling that you spent one summer there or multiple summers there?
Many summers.
5. Yeah, it feels like a special place. I think I didn't realize.
Yeah, very special. No, 5 summers as both a fellow and then a New From player. So New From was the quartet in residence. And I've actually played, so my roommate is the violist from that time, and we have a trio that we formed with a violinist friend of mine. If you know the new SRQ ensemble down in Sarasota, George Nixon is her husband, and so they've co-founded that together. Anyways, so Sam and Mary and I will play. That was a great concert. That was like, was that fall? Yeah, fall 2019. We did our first string trio performance, which was great, and did some Penderecki and this like modernist composer named Jean Claude that nobody really knows about, and I forget what else, some other newer works. We're doing our first commission this year, which we're excited to have that happen from a young composer. Should be done in a few months, so we'll see. So that was also really great. I guess this is not necessarily performance, but it's funny to think, sometimes I think back to what were the few things I was doing right before pandemic hit. And one of them was that I went to the Sphinx conference for the first time. Had a great time. I mean, it was like meeting all these people, saw some incredible performances. Who knew, like weeks later, everything would just be completely gone. But it was crazy how like it was only 3 days, but it felt so intense because you were just constantly kind of, well, basically at the hotel bar meeting people because everybody was hanging out down there. And it felt like a really kind of rejuvenating weekend, like all these musicians of color. I was like, sweet, like great, let's go back into the world. Ha ha ha.
This like was in New York. Is the conference?
No, Detroit.
Oh, cool.
So everybody was also just everybody flew in. Like hundreds of people, if not thousands, and all in one hotel. It's just kind of crazy to think how fun and carefree that was. And for a second, even though it was like in January, it felt like being at a festival. It kind of felt like you were, doing your own thing, and kind of energy. And I remember just feeling so excited about the people I met, and then I don't know. Then 2020 started laughing, and all of it.
And it hasn't stopped laughing. It's there's gonna be a way out. I keep thinking there's gonna be a way out. I think I used to, even months ago, would talk about going back to the before times, and it does feel important to say like let's go back to some of the things about the before times, but not all the things. I think like some of the ways we've been able to have conversations during this time and have time to think about the things that really need to change in the after times feels very important. But man, I want to play music for people in a room. Like those parts of the before times, I feel like let's embrace that part of it.
So just the other day, so here in Boston, somebody organized this thing called I think it's Boston Hope Project, where it's basically just getting musicians to show up at mass vac sites just to play. Awesome. And so I did it for the first time last Friday, which was cool. And of course the spaces are huge. It felt super safe. Most of us are partially vaccinated anyway, so it felt okay. But after we played our first piece, somebody clapped. And I kid you not, I went, like I just shot over. I was like, what's that sound?
Yeah.
Like I didn't have that in like a year, and it was amusing. And then eventually I was like, oh, more people clapping. Oh, I see. It's not a live stream where you have to like awkwardly be like, did you like it?
Totally. We haven't played that many live streams, but we did one from a concert hall. And it's just so hard. There were like 2 people, 3 people in the room. It's just like, can you please clap afterward? Just to get like, even if you didn't like it, can you just clap? Just like, we need like, how do you,
it's crazy. It's crazy. But I totally hear your point that like, it's weird to say this, but there is something about the way that things slowed down that I think just for society was good, not necessarily for, music only, but like that's one thing about seeing like everything off the books, right? But like last March it was like, and cancel
Yeah.
crap, we know what's next. But in all of that sort of quiet, I think we've all had a lot of time to think and to maybe think about the kinds of lives we're building for ourselves and like the things we want to accept or not accept, in terms of like
Yeah.
personal boundaries for like mental health and like taking care of yourself. So I am very that's the part of things that I'm very curious to see how we readapt or don't, like if we and not just as musicians, because I have a lot of friends who like work in tech and other things where I think it's a similar thing, right? It's like, wow, it turns out I can work from home and I don't have to live in this expensive city. So why would I pay rent in San Francisco this much? Like
Yeah. I think a lot. I think there'll be a lot of things to reevaluate that are positive to reevaluate for sure.
Yeah.
But human to human contact.
That thing, I'm gonna hug so many strangers.
I was gonna say I'm ready. Hey, let's make a concert happen. It would be so nice to. I would like hugs. When my family.
When I pass my second dose date, I might just be like, "Listen, guys, I'm safe. Can I hug you?"
Yeah,
like,
can it just
happen?
But yeah. That's great.
Yeah, like that's the part that feels so weird, right? It's like, and even just not like being able to really smile at people, like you're playing, right? It's like you're playing through a thing and like a funny moment happens and it's hard to interpret everything in people's eyes.
Yeah.
But I miss that kind of that little acknowledgement of like, oh, we're having a good time. Sweet.
Totally. Yeah. Totally. All right. Well, we should wrap this up for many reasons, but one, because somebody else may pop up on the line here. So we'll have more cameos in this Brooklyn Bound podcast. But April 15th at 7 p.m., we'll be gathering on YouTube and hearing some awesome sounds from Francesca, as well as Matchstick Percussion. And let's see, we're doing a bunch of percussion groups are doing a premiere of new Kendall Williams commission, which we're really pumped about. And a few pieces of mine, a few Go Plastic pieces. So come on out, say hey in the chat. Francesca, if you're around, say hey in the chat. It's nice to feel like we're listening to something together. But thanks for making an hour to chat. This has been amazing. Let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely. And next time Beth can be here too, fully.
Yeah, we'll give her a microphone.
Love it.
That was really great. I love that she could tell what we were talking about. That experience is very memorable for her. It comes up often as a near-death experience.
I'm glad I could be there for it.
So good. All right. Have a great rest of your day, Freddie Mac.
Thank you.
See you later. Bye.